Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Traver from Traver Gallery here in Seattle, and we are visiting Preston Singletary Studio as part of the Refract event. So welcome. This is the outside of Preston Studio you see here. We're going to go in and check out the hot shop. Come on. Hey, Preston.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. Thanks everybody for joining us today, and welcome to my studio virtually.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's a hot shop where we make most everything in my studio, and it's kind of quiet today, so.
Not working today?
We worked. Actually, I've been working on a big installation for the climate pleasure, and a big steel and glass sculpture displaying outside of the arena.
And so for anybody who's not in the Seattle area, the Climate Pledge Arena is our new arena at the Seattle Center, where Seattle's newest NHL team can be playing.
That's right.
The Kraken.
The Kraken.
And Preston, you're working on a project there with another artist, David Spencer, right?
David Franklin.
Oh, I'm sorry, David Franklin.
Yeah, David Franklin and I work together on public art pieces, and we're making proposals and getting these jobs finally over the trying. And we have several in the works now, and they'll be over the next couple of years will be complete.
And so what's the piece for the arena?
The arena is actually an octopus sculpture. So it's a steel. I have a maquette. I'll point it out. We kind of go through the studio, but it's so it's water jet cut steel, and then there's glass inlays that kind of fit inside the cutouts. Oh yeah. So So anyway, this is the studio and all the tools and the workbench and things that I use, and torches and so it's a rather modest studio size-wise, but I can manage to do pretty much everything that I need to here. When I do larger pieces, then sometimes I'll have to go to I'll take the opportunity if I go to the museum of glass or somewhere, make larger pieces. But this suits my needs pretty well.
Yeah. And so for those of you who maybe aren't as familiar with Preston's work, Preston, you are a sort of classically trained glass blower who kind of came up through Potlatch and through various studios here in the area and learned sort of traditional glass blowing techniques, but you have really taken that and pushed it in a new direction. Can you talk a little bit about how you work today?
So part of my cultural background is Tlingit, Alaska Native tribe. But my great grandmother moved to Seattle in the 1920s, and so we grew up in the Seattle area at that time. Everything that I do is basically inspired by my cultural background. It's the work that I do today, and we'll see lots of examples of that. But so I've over the years I've gone through the process of learning, developing these sandblasting techniques and sculptural approaches to making the hot glass pieces. I also work in cast glass and making patterns that are then turned into lost wax castings. So everything I do is pretty connected to my cultural background. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm working with the tribal community quite a bit in Alaska, and kind of advising, we're on these artist committees that we're advising these cultural art centers how to how to create educational programming around the traditional arts and the language and the history and the art forms. So that's really kind of something that's kind of like my life at this point. It's like a very important aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, you really were one of the very first Native artists to be working with glass as a primary.
Yeah, there was a couple that came before me, but yeah, I've been doing it. So basically, I started doing the tribal designs in like kind of dabbled, went back and forth. At 96 and 7, I started to really focus on it. And so today the numbers are growing. There's more people that are working in the class today. In fact, there's a show in Santa Fe at the Museum of Indian Arts and Cultures, and it's called Clearly Indigenous. And it's an overview of indigenous glass art. So it takes liberties in Australian Aboriginal and Maori and less different indigenous people. But there's about 40 people in this show. So
wow, that's very cool. So what we'll see here in the studio today, we'll walk through and we'll see kind of how Preston does the work. So here where we are right now is of course the Potlatch studio where, and you can talk more about this, but where the original, the initial blown platform was made.
right. Yeah. So I mean, we have the furnace with the hot glass, and our other workstation called the Glory Hall. That's turned on at the start of the day and then turned off at the end of the day. But it's just a reheating chamber. It is used, as glass has gone, to the extent that I can manipulate the shape and I need to get more heat. So I bring it into this little furnace here, build the heat back up, and then I shape further shape form. And I use most everything. I mean, I do have some small molds for some details, like little masks that are cast in, and then sometimes these are incorporated into other blown forms. Of course, all the these color cups up here, these are how I create layers of color. So I'll drop a bubble inside there and create a veiling of color, which gives the appearance that the whole piece of glass is that color, whatever color I apply. And then I also use powders that I'll apply to the surface, and I build up that layer of powder on the exterior to give me a contrast when I go to carve through it and expose the color. So, so there's this is kind of the room with all the color selections that I have in its raw form. I have the powder in these bins, and then these rods of glass are also used in different ways.
So once you have the sort of the basic sculptural form, the hot glass will go in the annealer and cool, and then you're going to start a process that's all cold working.
Correct.
So let's take a look at the rest of the studio and see how that happens.
So this is pretty much where I sit, across from my lovely friend Britt, who does a lot of the work side by side with the cutting. So what I'll do is I'll draw the lines onto the piece, and then most often Britt will be the one who cuts these sections out.
Sorry to interrupt you, Preston. So what we're looking at here is not actually the glass surface. This is like a rubberized material, right?
Yeah, it's a rubber tape. You can kind of see the splice lines here, but we kind of wrap the whole form in this rubber tape. And then it allows me to basically just to draw onto the piece and mark out the areas, proportion out the areas that I want to have these design elements. So this is a form that was actually blown into a mold, get a very traditional shape, and this is a hawk mask. So this is kind of an experimental piece. I've never done anything like this. A lot of trial and error, trying to figure out new things to do. And
the designs that you use are sort of based on the traditional form line design. So can you talk just briefly about what the sort of elemental structure is there?
Yeah, I mean, the Northwest Coast art, Plinkett art, is basically comprised of a few different elements. You have the ovoid here, and you have the U shape here. So this is just a much larger U shape, and then this is sort of broken up into two smaller U shapes. And so these little points here are called trigons. And so here you have a U shape here. You have kind of almost like a larger U shape here, but it's sort of broken into like a feather kind of configuration. And these eyes are all of this is very, based on the style and the architecture of the Tlingit tribe. So it looks familiar, but it's my own composition. I have on the wall, you can see some of the traditional designs that I've created for paper. And that's just more or less exercise in design work and making, something, the big tradition of making prints with Northwest Flipchart. So another facet, which you're kind of looking at now, this is a bronze cast. So I've made these in glass as well. So when I work with these forms, I work collaboratively with the carver. In the case of this one, David Svensson worked with me on this design. And so I told him a story of how I wanted the totem pole to look. And this is a story, so this represents my family, and this is my wife, Åsa, here. And she is from Sweden. So it's kind of like a Swedish, the Viking native connection. So then this figure here is Odin. So this is, Norse god, with a sort of a long boat here. Odin is often depicted with two ravens. So he's got two ravens on either side. And of course, the raven is big symbolism of Tlingit culture as well. So that's why I decided to make this form. And by tradition, the totem poles always tell a story. So this figure here is my daughter. So this is my daughter, Lydia. It's my son, Orlo. And then this is our dog, Ori, and represented as, a very intimidating wolf. And she's really just a little cockapoo. Anyway, so that's the story of those. And so oftentimes we'll make a mold from this and then do a lost wax casting, and I have a couple examples of those over here. So this one is one of the lost wax castings. And it's cast in the Czech Republic. It's cast in lead crystal. And this one I called Meditations with Fire. This was the top figure you have here is the eagle. And then you can kind of see the eagle's wings here with the beak. And then this is an homage to a dear departed friend, Joe Benvenuto. So this was shown holding a basket. So unfortunately, Joe passed away a few years ago from brain cancer, and so he was an assistant to me for many, many years, and a good friend. And so here's me as a glass blower. So I've got like holding a glass blowing pipe, and within the structure of a killer whale. And then again, we have another octopus design, and that to me kind of represents the flowing nature of glass, hot glass. And then up here at the very top, we have the sun. So this was first time I've done this where, creating this little notch where I could rest a different colored piece of glass.
So that sun on top is actually a second piece that rests on top.
It actually just rests right in there.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah.
And Preston, you've done these, so next to this piece, there's two larger totems.
Yeah.
One wood and one bronze, but you've actually done these in glass as well.
Yeah, I've done these cast and full scale. These ones were about 2,000 pounds of glass. And this was a story of my great grandmother who had pet grizzly bear as a child. So this was the grizzly bear cub. And it kind of has killer whale designs, which is part of my family background. This my family killer whale clan. So anyway, so that represents my great grandmother. And over here, there's one this one is a transforming killer whale, which was a name that was given to me by Joe David, who's another well-renowned artist from Vancouver Island, and he's a very traditional carver native. And so he shared his name with me, which is Kakao in Chief. It means transforming killer whale. So this is a half wolf, half killer whale figure, mythological figure. And then the face is more of, it's a kind of a shaman face.
And this is glass.
And that's glass, yeah. It's cast in opal glass.
Oh, beautiful color. So when you, just curious, when you started doing the Tlingit design in glass, were you thinking ahead to making work on this scale? How does this kind of come about for you?
It just evolved. I mean, I think I had a show, very first time I showed this work, I showed that.
Mm-hmm. I remember.
And it was, so that was something that I think that for me, I was trying to find something that was more personal,
Mm-hmm.
and waited to sort of make myself a little more distinct from the other glass artists, So I turned to my culture and I started to make this work, but I think also people responded to it because it was something that was more personal.
Mm-hmm.
And then so, something, digging a little deeper, it was for me, it was a process of discovery, really. I mean, and I had to kind of reinvent myself in a lot of ways and learn how to draw. I mean, I always sketch, but I didn't like draw, these elements,
Mm-hmm.
very, very technically. I mean, I had to learn how to do that. And
Did you work with mentors like Joe David to kind of learn that?
Yeah. I took workshops, learned from like people like Steve Brown doing Pasco and Israel Shopich. I was just studying the work and talking with other artists and how they approached it, and basically, it came to the point where I could create my own designs, that would be not copied out of books.
Right. Can we see some of the work that's in progress here?
Yeah. So a lot of these pieces, well, they're kind of on the bottom shelf. These pieces have been completed but are awaiting mounts that need a lot of these are, well, 4 of them are wall mounted forms, and they're kind of so they're awaiting a metal fixture that will be attached on the bottom, on the back, and it can hang it on the wall. These are pieces that I made this past, just on Tuesday. So I'm starting to make some work for the upcoming show.
In April at Traver Gallery.
Right. So this is kind of a bear's tooth form, it's exaggerated in its scale, but it's what it represents.
This is so cool to see the work before it has any tape on it or has been carved at all. So
yeah.
This is just the initial blown form as it comes out of the annealer. And then after that, you wrap the whole thing in tape, draw the form line, and then these pieces on the bottom shelf that we're seeing, this is after that they've been sandblasted and that tape has been removed, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct. And we can go in the back room. You can see a little bit of where that's done. Obviously, the pieces that are all green, these are again the rubber tape that I use to create the designs on. And let's take a look in the back room here. And so this is Terry.
Hi, Terry.
And we're live here. Terry, so this is Terry's domain back here where she does all of the carving on the glass. She does all the sandblasting. So basically, here's a piece that's been cut, and the stencil has been cut, and all of these areas that are exposed are the areas that Terry's going to wear the surface of the glass down to expose the color underneath. And so that it's it's all been, cut, and I went over the lines just to make sure that that it met, my standard. And Rick's really good at doing the stencil. Both of these girls have been helping me for, 15 years at least. I mean, I think it feels like it's more, but maybe it's 15. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, time flies when we're having fun. And so, anyways, that's the machine that she's standing by. That's where it's place
Eric,
your.
can you kind of show? Sorry to put you on the spot. I don't think you were anticipating being live. But,
Yeah.
so your hands are in there, and there's like high pressurized sand being blown at the seat.
Would be if it was on.
If it was.
I turned it off so that you guys could hear. But yeah, it would come out of this hose and carve away. Right now, I'm actually cutting. Not carving it.
That's so cool. Thank you.
So yeah, so a lot of, as you can see now, that a lot of the pieces that have been made and they're waiting the design process are all on the shelves here. Different shapes that I will select, for the upcoming shows, and try to find, a nice variety of shapes and colors and whatever the theme of the show is going to be. And then over here are some other elements that are made and could be attached to other objects, other blown forms. So these pieces are made, in advance, just focusing on these shapes for the whole day, and then bring them back up to temperature, and then apply them to, the glass in different ways. So there's that. So we can go upstairs.
So you have a pretty amazing collection of other artwork in here as well.
Yeah, a lot of these pieces are, I mean, I can't afford artwork, but I trade it with my friends. So that's not true. On occasion, I'll buy some art, depending on the price. So anyways, these are, just pieces that have no destination at the moment. I'll kind of bring all these pieces together for shows, upcoming shows, and then all kind of sits around up here. And it's another area where I'll sit and draw over here. And when I'm not working on the pieces hands-on downstairs, so I'll do a lot of the sketches and ideas, sketching out ideas to make in the hot shop.
So, Preston, I know that we have some collectors on this tour with us today. Are the pieces that we're looking at here, some of these are available?
Some of them are, yeah. If there's anything that you see, surely don't hesitate to contact Sarah, and we can talk about it.
Yeah, so
see what is available. There's a few things that are spoken for, but yeah. And this was we've seen these pieces before. This is kind of an unusual shape here, or form, but it's a traditional thing called a tina, or a copper form, and these were some people think they're shields. They're not shields. They just kind of denote the high status of individuals. And they're kind of like an heirloom that is kept and it's kind of displayed in Potlatch. You know, it's like, yeah, I got this thing. It's typically made. It is made from copper. Copper deposits, you know, that were traditionally found in Alaska, and they're basically pounded into this shape. And so, so to me, well, actually, it's also referred to as a money piece. So people, you know, the Tlingit culture would have, you know, held this in very high regard. So I had to try a glass version.
Yeah, I like the edges where you have that, the
Yeah.
effect of the hammered copper there.
Yeah, so this is basically taken from a real copper pool that was traditionally made, and so I intentionally left that detail there.
So this is a cast piece.
Cast glass, yeah.
Preston, while we're up here and we have this view of the studio, we can see the original pulley system here. Can you just speak briefly about the sort of history of this space? It's an interesting studio space in Seattle.
Yeah, this was originally built as a glass, or not a glass, a sculpture, a school for sculpture. Fitzgerald.
Yeah, so it was a bronze foundry?
Yeah, yeah. And so that's what, you know, I have these big hoists for the crucibles and art casting.
Yeah.
And then in the early 80s, then Sonia Bloomdahl and William Morris took over this space. And Sonia used the hot shop, and William used the rest for storage. And then he moved on, got a different studio space. And Sonia was here for about 25 years.
Okay.
And then when I took it over, you know, 10 plus years ago, I've been, since.
Yeah, it's for those of you who know how Seattle is developing right now, it's an interesting spot in that it's kind of grandfathered in as an artist studio in an area of town that is just, I mean, across the street from here, there's a huge building being built right now, and it's all the Fred Hutch campus and you know, all the cancer research centers are right here, and yet this one building has remarkably been preserved as an artist studio. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, at least in part due to the fact that people love having an artist studio here in this area.
Well, yeah, I think, you know, I think eventually they will tear this building down, but I'm not sure when. The development that's sort of getting closer and closer starts to worry me. But yeah, I do have a good relationship with Fred Hutch, who I learned from, and they're the ones that would eventually build over in this general area and probably put up, you know, some big high buildings. So you know, anyways, that for right now, I'm the beneficiary of having all the space sitting.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what I would do if I didn't have this space. It would be pretty tolerated.
Rare commodity in Seattle.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's walk into your kind of office space here and see what else is going on.
Yeah. So this is kind of like the office space where Celine is usually working. She's my studio manager. And then I have more kind of display areas and what have you, and a bit of a library and some small curios.
Collections.
Small things that.
You a baseball fan?
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, it's kind of you know, the studio becomes a bit of a catch-all, you know, stuff that my wife doesn't want to have around the house anymore. So. Get it out of here. But yeah, so this kind of fun, little collection of traditional baskets. These are, inspire the glass versions of what I do. And I had a couple of different people come to me with their basket collections and just asked me if I would be interested in trading. So I said, sure. I didn't feel like I really had a choice, but I ended up, enjoying them anyway. So those are kind of some prototypes that I had done for diffusers. I had a friend, a good sort of friend who wanted to create an interior store, and I think this was just before COVID, and so now all that's on hold. But he wanted me to make some diffusers for that he could market. So this is what I came up with. Yeah.
Can you tell a little bit about these pieces? These are sort of interesting.
Yeah, these are collaborations with Joe David, and since Joe is such a traditional and really respected elder, when I work on pieces with him, it's I feel like they're really special things. So these are called lightning snake dance headdresses. So these are traditional. They look very close to the traditional headdresses that are danced by the New Channel tribe, which is the west coast of Vancouver Island. And so these are often danced in pairs. And so in any case, that's the you look in history books, you'll see that shape. And they're really, to me, they're I think they're really distinctive and unusual.
And you do sometimes, I mean, this is an example of where you incorporated different material into the work. So this is cedar bark.
Correct. Yeah.
And whereas here you've actually used, is this horsehair?
Yeah, horsehair. So these are some other versions. This is another one by Joe David and myself. So I do the blowing of these forms, based on his rough sketches, and then he actually put the design work on it. So these are very, very typical of New Channel style. So it's a little bit different than the northern Tlingit style, but it's kind of related. You can see similarities in them. And this one was my own kind of version of a headdress form. And this is a bear design.
And is this the?
This is the Kraken.
The Kraken.
This is a lost wax casting collaboration I did with David Franklin. So he's been using a lot of octopus imagery in his work over the years, and so we made this together.
Very cool. Maybe you can just give us a quick little tour of the work that's on these shelves here.
Yeah, there's the top shelf. We got some collaborations by me and Dante Marioni, and then the two rattle forms on the posts. Those are inspired by rattle, traditional rattles. And then the lower ones are just different amulet shapes, or this is based on a bear here, and this one is a little bit more abstract. It's kind of inspired by a rattle form because of the the globe rattle. Over there are some small, they're exaggerated versions of shaman amulets and teeth. There's again another tooth form there. A lot of these pieces are like this whole bottom shelf, these are all experimentations. These are things that I've made that was just kind of playing with the form. They're kind of a grawl type of technique where I picked the bubble back up after it was carved and made the shape, manipulated the shape. So it's got a little bit of softer texture rather than the hard carved sandblasting. And that's sculptured by Ross Richmond, and he made those pieces several years ago, and he said, well, I thought maybe they would look better if you put some design on them. So I did put some of my handiwork on the back.
So I feel like the word collaboration has come up a lot in this walkthrough.
Mm-hmm.
How do you approach collaboration, and why? I mean, that seems like that's an important part of your art.
Yeah, I mean, I think glass blowing in general is collaborative work. I mean, it's teamwork, and we all kind of work together, for a common goal. And so, in some cases, saying, or how like Ross, for instance, makes some of these figures that I started to, develop for my pieces. And so he's so good at it that he works with me, and kind of as to round out his work schedule. And but when I work collaboratively with other people, other native artists, or in the case of working with Dante, I mean, Dante was, one of my oldest friends, and got me into glass blowing. And so it was suggested that, maybe we try to do some work together. And I hadn't even really thought about it. We were always busy doing our own work, independently of each other. But I used to help them out quite a bit. And so I hadn't really questioned why we hadn't really worked together. It just didn't really come up. So when we started to do it, it became a lot of fun, because then we get to hang out and we get to bounce ideas off each other. And so we took the idea of basketry. So the Reticello designs were kind of inspired initially about the basket weaving. And so when I'm working with other native artists, often I'm trying to develop new work, and just interacting with other indigenous artists for me gives me a new another perspective on what indigenous people do, the art that they do, what's the symbolism behind it, and how do they synthesize it for today's market. Mm-hmm. Because in the old days, the work that I as an artist would go to my community, and and in modern times, the clan leaders were, in the olden times, the clan leaders would commission the artwork to be made of the artist, and that doesn't happen as much as it used to. So, so as an artist, we're kind of forced to go to the commercial market, and sell work, and it leaves the community. Doesn't benefit the community, So, but it's really the only way to to be a practicing working artist. You have to make a living. So, but when it comes down to making something significant for the community, like I was commissioned to make a piece for a cultural arts center in Alaska, and then I felt like I was waiting my whole life, or preparing my whole life to do this piece, and honing my ability of designing and honing the technique and the process. And so then it felt like it was time. I was ready to do it.
Yeah. It's an interesting interesting point that you make, that the, like, for Indigenous artists like that, how does that transfer to the commercial marketplace? And historically, I mean, it's unusual, and I think you're one of a few examples of artists who have really kind of bridged that. But it is challenging for sure. And I would think that, I mean, you talk a lot about how you are learning from the other artists that you're working with, and I imagine that goes both ways, right?
Yeah, and so in a lot of ways, I feel like kind of an advocate for glass, you know, and, you know, then helping people understand what the possibilities are. And so that part is really, you know, it's kind of a nice exchange, and, you know, we, you know, both get a little, you know, notoriety for, you know, the work that's happening. And so, yeah, it's fun.
That's great. Should we sit down for a minute and maybe talk a little bit about what you have coming up? I know, in addition to the exhibition at Traver Gallery in April, there's a couple openings preceding that. Well, there's one big opening preceding that. You want to talk about the show at the Prestons?
Yeah, there's a show that I made called Raven in the Box of Daylight. It's originated at the Museum of Glass, and it's traveling. Went to the Wichita Art Museum, and now it's going to go to the Smithsonian, the National Museum of the American Indian. And so that'll be there for a year-long run. And so that's kind of an immersive installation of work, and it's kind of places you in the story of how Raven stole the sun. So it's pretty elaborate, and it's has, you know, video projection, and there's a soundscape that is, you know, specific for the exhibition. So part of my moonlight partly as a musician, something that I do and take kind of semi-seriously. But then I made some music with my friends and created, you know, soundscape for that.
So I saw that exhibition in Coma when it was there. I didn't get to see it in Wichita because of the pandemic, but how does that work as an artist? So you design this immersive exhibition for a particular space. I imagine it has to be redesigned in some capacity when it travels. Is that?
It gets redesigned, you know, depending on the configuration of the gallery, and or, you know, museum spaces, you know, rooms. Then it has to be big enough, so it's about, I don't know, 3,000 square feet of you know, and there's about 45 pieces in the show, and so so each venue, they, you know, send me like a kind of a sketch up with all the rooms that the piece will be going into, and then I have to create the kind of
layout.
And so that part is something that changes over time.
And when does that open? In January?
January 28th. 2022.
Cool. And that'll be in Washington, D.C. So folks are in the area, go check that out for sure. And you're also being honored by another Smithsonian institution, the Renwick. The James Renwick Alliance is honoring you with a Master of Craft award, I think, next week or the week following?
Yes, next, the
20-something of October.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think it's 2 weeks from tomorrow. Yeah.
And that's a big deal. So that's like, it's not a lifetime achievement award, but it's sort of a similar recognition in that you and I think 3 other artists who are working in different craft media are being recognized for really obviously being a master of that medium that you're working in, but I think also really a recognition of how you have pushed that medium forward and kind of challenged our notions of what glass can do. And so that'll be happening in a couple weeks. I also want to acknowledge that there's a recent exhibition by the Renwick Gallery in also, you know, same Renwick, DC, they just purchased a major work of yours as part of their, they're doing a big acquisition campaign for their 50th anniversary. So can you talk about the people?
There's a box that I had in the exhibition from last spring, or this past spring. And it was a box, a glass box that was illuminated from within, and it kind of represented kind of a burial box, or kind of the little lights inside kind of created like a galaxy, lights moving, and so that kind of represented the passing of my father, who died last November. The whole exhibition that I did in the spring was kind of around that theme, which was a way for me to kind of process his death, and by keeping him kind of in the forefront of my mind, just kind of thinking about him, and keeping him close, and thinking about art, making something that would kind of represent him or mythologize his life.
That's a wonderful tribute to your family to have that in such a major collection and kind of be able to tell your family story a bit. And when we say box, don't picture a box. Box.
It's more of a chest. Yeah. They're traditionally made of curved and steamed bent wood, but they're quite large. Rectangular, and it was quite a heavy piece. And monumental for the scope of glass itself, because it's such a large piece.
Yeah. And then I want to mention where people, if you are in Seattle and you're doing Refract events in person, or you just want to get out and see Preston's work, you have work right now at Stonington Gallery, which is a wonderful gallery in Seattle that represents Northwest Coast Native artists. And that is a show jointly with Raven Traver.
Yes, and Dan Friday.
And that's, I think, for the month.
Yes, yeah.
We also always have Preston's work on view at Traver Gallery, so encourage folks to come by and see original black work there. And then you and Raven are doing a demo tomorrow at Seattle Glass Blowing.
Yes.
From
12 o'clock, probably 12 to 3, I'm guessing. And we're going to make some of the work that we've been doing together, the whale forms with the sandblasting.
And that is an in-person event. People can attend.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. Do we want to open this up to questions for a little bit? I'm not sure folks are going to be willing to jump on, but would love to take some questions from the audience. We drop them into the chat. I think I can read them out, and we'll answer some questions.
All right.
I'm going to jump over to this other computer.
Okay.
So Preston, while we're waiting for people to add questions to the chat, can you talk a little bit about your music today?
Oh, happily. So I have this group, we call ourselves Ku-E, which means Potlatch in language. It's we're about ready to release our 4th album, and it's triple LP, so we do vinyl. I have some here. You can see a lot of effort is put into the artwork. And so these are double and triple LPs. This one is called "They Forgot They Survived." It's it's kind of a commentary on the survival of native cultures. This one was called "Heen." This is a water themed album. This came out about the time when the Dakota pipeline protests were happening. So we kind of made a whole album that was themed around water. And the next one's called Wooch, and that means people came together. And this, we worked, we collaborated with a fellow named Bernie Worrell, who was a very famous musician. He was co-founder of Parliament Funkadelic, and it was music that I really admired. And so I had the good fortune to meet him. My band opened up for his, and then he mentioned to me that we should get together and collaborate on some music, and I was kind of blown away. And I took him up on it right away, and we made all this music together. This last album, the fourth album, is the final collaborative music that he ever produced. So he passed away in 2016, and but we did work for 3 years on all this music. So very cool. Check it out.
Yeah.
We have a website dedicated to the band.
So I do have one question in here from Elizabeth, and she's curious to know how she can view work that is available for purchase at the studio. I'll field that question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk to me.
Yeah. Exactly.
Talk to Sarah or anyone at Traver Gallery, and we can work with Preston to get you images of work that is of interest. And yeah, there's.
Yeah, most everything we have, professional photos, if there's anything that want to make note of. And I did just send about 5 new pieces to the gallery.
Yeah.
So those are posted. Those are some of the newest works. And
there's some exceptional pieces at our gallery right now, and I would encourage anyone to jump on the website. All of Preston's available works that are at the gallery are posted on our website. Of course, there's no substitute for seeing work in person or on video, so we're always happy to give you a tour in person or set up a FaceTime call and do a virtual visit.
Yeah. A couple more
questions. What's next, Preston? This is from Elisa. Is there a challenge of imagery or medium, something you haven't tried yet?
Well, there's a couple of big public art jobs that are coming up, which those are kind of challenging. The one that we did, that's going on up at the Climate Pledge arena, that is just getting finished up. Actually, after this, I'm going to dash down to the center and start grinding on this piece of metal.
Literally.
Yeah. And but then, so over here, you can pan across the large mural here that you can see is printed on glass, and so it's multiple panels of glass you can see, and so I'm playing with that technique a little bit more, and I'm going to be creating some a big composition similar to this for the Montlake Terrace Sound Transit Station. Cool. Yeah. So it'll be printed on the glass. It'll be quite visible from the distance. It should be kind of a fun and dramatic format to work with. And as usual, I'm still. I'll be working on, right now I'm starting to concentrate more on the show for the spring at the Traver Gallery, which is, we've been doing these shows annually every April, and so I kind of gear up right about now to make all the new pieces for the show. And there will be, some new sculptural forms, and I was thinking, we recently lost Benjamin Moore. He was a really important friend and mentor to me as well. And so, I think I had just lost my father. So I'm gonna go okay, now I'm gonna do one that, but there's a few. Benny was a big goose hunter, so I'm thinking of some goose imagery that I can incorporate into the new show. Cool. And kind of a little bit. So I started to I'll make objects and then I'll decide what to call it. So in this case, I started with the titles and then I started to, you know, conjure up forms for the objects, or yeah, for the titles. So anyway, just trying to mix it up.
Yeah, looking forward to that. There's a question from Rana McNeil here. Which part of your creative process in creating your work do you enjoy the most?
Well, I think, yeah, it's about the conceptualizing what I would like to do and what kind of effect, you know, the object can have on the viewer. I think something that, you know, is kind of surprising and challenging, but I have to say that pretty much every day coming to work is kind of it's exciting because it's kind of like an adventure, you know, to like, what am I going to do today? So I mean, I'll sit down and just start putting lines down on the work, you know, and then it just kind of starts to emerge, and so that part is really fun. I mean, I don't feel like it's quite like it's a chore. It's a real joy to come in and just be able to be creative every day.
Yeah.
I mean, because if I'm not traveling, I'm working. I don't know. I have you know, kids that are in college, so I'm not retiring anytime soon.
Preston, thank you very much for this opportunity to walk through the studio with you and learn about your process and your work and what you've got coming up. It's really been a pleasure.
Oh, thank you.
And yeah, thank you all for joining us today. I hope that you enjoyed the tour, and thank you to Mary for dropping the Tweet website address into the chat. Folks were asking about that as well. So check out Preston's work, both musically and sculpturally, on all the various sites that we shared here. So yeah, hope to see you soon. Thank you. Bye.